Have you ever just looked around at all the chaos? The demands, the constant noise. Sometimes it feels like the people cutting corners are the ones getting ahead.
Mm.
And you just wish for something solid, some real perspective. I think we all crave that stability, that sense of um, genuine renewal, and maybe some assurance that trusting in something lasting actually works, that it leads to a good life. Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving deep into an ancient text that feels incredibly relevant, Psalm 92. The title itself is pretty direct, Praise for the Lord's Goodness. And there's this little note saying it's a psalm or a song for the Sabbath day. So we're not just reading it, we're looking for the wisdom inside, kind of like a formula for resilience.
Exactly. And that note for the Sabbath day, that's really important. It sets the whole tone, the mission, if you will. It signals the psalm is meant to be like an anchor in your week. It mixes intense praise, the sharp contrast between, temporary evil and eternal good, and then this powerful message of hope. Our job today is to sort of distill that core message. It's like a blueprint for a fruitful life. And we want to see how its ancient ideas can really strengthen your trust, your connection with God right now.
Okay, so it kicks off right away in verse 1 with, well, it feels like a command almost. It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High. It doesn't just say gratitude is nice, it calls it a good thing, like inherently positive.
Yes, and notice the consistency it demands. This isn't just, when you feel like it. The psalmist immediately sets a rhythm. Show forth loving kindness in the morning and thy faithfulness every night. That establishes gratitude as a discipline, a ritual. When you intentionally start and end your day acknowledging God's goodness, well, it builds a kind of framework, makes it harder for the chaos to get in.
I like that, a framework. It suggests spiritual well-being isn't just luck, it's something you actively build. And it even gets specific about the worship, mentioning the tools, singing praises upon an instrument of 10 strings, and upon the psaltery, upon the harp with a solemn sound.
Right. It's not just mumbling thanks under your breath. This is intentional, maybe even high effort worship. It's meant to be focused, beautiful.
Yeah.
And the reason for all this effort, verse 4 tells us directly, for thou, Lord, hast made me glad through thy work. That's the connection. Your gladness, your joy isn't just some random feeling or based on whether you had a good day. It's a direct, logical response to seeing and appreciating what God does. It's rooted in his actions.
Okay, let's unpack this shift then, because it moves from that mandate for gratitude into something bigger, a cosmic perspective. Here's where it gets really interesting. Verse 5, the psalmist is just floored by God's wisdom. O Lord, how great are thy works, and thy thoughts are very deep. That phrase, very deep, suggests something almost unfathomable, right?
It does. And then immediately, the next verse draws the sharp contrast with, human limits. It says, a brutish man knoweth not, neither doth a fool understand this.
Yeah.
The idea is that someone who's only focused on the surface level, the immediate, they just can't grasp the depth of God's plan. They see things very simply, cause and effect right now. But God's thoughts are deep because they involve these huge, intricate, long-term patterns of justice, mercy, purpose, stuff that stretches way beyond our immediate view.
Okay, but let's be real. For someone listening who's maybe struggling, facing unfairness right now, hearing about deep thoughts might feel a bit abstract. And the psalm acknowledges this. Verse 7 says, the wicked spring as the grass, that the workers of iniquity flourish. We see that. Corrupt systems seem to win sometimes. People get away with things. So the question that pops up is, why bother being righteous if the dishonest seem to be thriving today?
And that is the absolute core tension the psalm tackles. It doesn't brush it off. It gives the essential long-term view that actually can bring peace now. Yes, they flourish like grass, but how long does grass last, especially in that climate? It's quick, it's shallow, it's fleeting. Their ultimate end is stated clearly. They shall be destroyed forever. It's temporary. The deep perspective it asks for is to look beyond the moment, to the eternal reality in verse 8. The Lord art most high forevermore. When you anchor yourself to that reality, to God's eternal nature, suddenly the temporary winds of the wicked, they lose some of their power to sting.
That definitely shifts the perspectives, from the temporary success of some to the eternal foundation for others. So let's pivot then to the promise for the faithful. It describes this incredible vitality, verse 10. My horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of a unicorn. I shall be anointed with fresh oil.
Powerful imagery there. The horn often symbolized strength, dignity, maybe even victory, like being lifted up and being anointed with fresh oil. That speaks of revitalization, refreshment, maybe even healing or consecration. Think of it not just as a one-off, but maybe an ongoing source of renewal. It emphasizes that this kind of deep, lasting vitality isn't something we just grit our teeth and produce ourselves. It's a gift from God. sustainable strength.
Yeah, sustainable is a good word.
Yeah.
Especially gets that feeling of burnout we all know.
Yeah.
And then the metaphors get even richer using nature. Verse 12, the righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon.
Oh, these are brilliant choices. They weren't random. The palm tree. Known for thriving in harsh conditions, finding water deep down, bearing fruit even in the desert. That's resilience. And the cedar of Lebanon. Immense, fragrant, incredibly long-lived. Some live for centuries, even a millennium. The wood itself is famously resistant to rot. So the image is one of deep roots, endurance, lasting fruitfulness, and inherent strength and value. It's not easily knocked over or worn down.
So it's not just about surviving the tough times, but actually being built to resist decay, to keep growing.
Precisely. And look where they're planted, according to verse 13, those that be planted in the house of the Lord. They flourish there. And this leads to verse 14. They shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be fat and flourishing. This totally pushes back against the idea that usefulness just declines with age. It celebrates ongoing contribution, wisdom, continued vibrancy.
Which all serves a purpose, right? The final verse, verse 15, flourishing is to show that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. So the very lives of the faithful become evidence, proof of God's character.
Exactly. Their endurance, their fruitfulness, it demonstrates God's faithfulness publicly. And that brings us right to how this ancient wisdom hits us today. Let's start with that Sabbath idea. In our crazy, always-on world, Psalm 92's focus on Sabbath, on intentional pausing. It's a radical challenge, making time, whether it's weekly or even just daily moments, morning and night, like the Psalm says, to give thanks, to reflect. That actively reduces stress. And it builds trust because you're relying on God's provision, not just your own frantic effort. That rest is an act of faith.
Okay, and thinking back to dealing with injustice, when you adopt that long-term vision, the psalm pushes. Suddenly the person who cheated to get ahead, their success feels, well, less important.
Threatened.
Less threatening, because you see it as grass, right, temporary. Viewing things through God's eternal perspective, that really can bring peace.
It really can. And for anyone feeling burned out, that image of being anointed with fresh oil, it's like a spiritual prescription. When your own energy is gone, the call isn't necessarily to just try harder. It's to seek renewal through connection with God, through prayer, worship, whatever that looks like for you. It's tapping into his source, which doesn't run dry, instead of just relying on your own diminishing reserves.
Which means if we live this out, if we build that resilience, that integrity, that deep-rootedness like the cedar, our lives become a kind of testimony. Our flourishing isn't just for us, it shows others God's faithfulness. Living with that kind of grounded gratitude and strength becomes a powerful witness. And, that probably reinforces our own belief too, seeing it play out.
Absolutely. It creates this positive feedback loop. Ultimately, the psalm maps out how intentional gratitude, taking time for rest and reflection, and deeply relying on God leads to this incredibly durable, sustained flourishing. And that flourishing proves God's faithfulness again and again through all the seasons of life.
So what does this all mean? It means you've got a roadmap here, a blueprint for genuine resilience. It doesn't matter what the world throws at you, because your foundation, if you build it this way, is rooted in something lasting, something strong, something fruitful, not just the ups and downs of the moment. How will you apply this information in your life?